Hi Tim, I work with Elon Musk. He likes Wait But Why. Wondering if you'd ever be interested in writing about what's going on. There are a lot of things about Musk that make him so successful, but I do think there's a secret sauce. This rocket factory we're in is yours. It's a thing you have. The one thing that held stable and strong in Musk's life was his marriage of 8 years. If by stable and strong you mean falling apart entirely in a soul-crushing, messy divorce. Most of it is from 2015. Now it's 10 years later. So what I want to do is look at these blog posts from Wait But Why, how the whole situation changed 10 years later. Alright, this time a bit of a different video, or actually it's a video series. I want to make 5 videos about this blog post from Wait But Why. If you don't know Wait But Why, it's very worth reading. Tim Urban is the author of this blog, and he writes about all kinds of topics in society, in philosophy, politics, and also technology and self-development. And also for me personally, it's the first time that I dug into the topics of who is Elon Musk, what is Tesla, what is SpaceX, etc. This blog post was the first time that I really dug into these topics, and that was kind of how I got started and how my interest arose. And yeah, now 10 years later, I'm still interested in all of these topics and I still follow them very closely. And this series is, here it says 2017, but the first 4 posts are from 2015. And then the last post about Neuralink was kind of an add-on, and that's from 2017. So most of it is from 2015, and now it's 10 years later, a bit more than 10 years later. So what I want to do is look at these posts again, look at how the whole situation changed since then. So 10 years later. Tim Urban was getting a lot of fame also through a TED Talk he made about procrastination. I can recommend that TED Talk also very much. Okay, so let's look at the first post of this 5-post series, the introduction to the whole series. To start with, Tim depicts in a graphic how it all started. On the phone he says hello, and the woman on the other side says, "Hi Tim, thanks for taking the time to get on the phone. I work with Elon Musk. He likes Wait But Why, and he was wondering if you'd ever be interested in writing about what's going on in some of the industries that he's involved in." Yeah, so that's how the whole thing started. His reaction to this was just a big face. And yeah, that graphic shows how Tim has animated all his graphics and how the style is of the whole post series. So after being in shock and then losing his head, he agrees to make up a phone call and to make it work somehow. And he said that for him it was a no-brainer anyways, because he was already interested in the automotive business, in electric vehicles, in space exploration, in SpaceX as a company. And he also recently published a post about artificial intelligence a few months before. So he was already interested and wanted to write something about these topics anyways. So of course he said yes. And after having a phone call with Elon Musk, they decided that it's best if he comes to the companies and directly speaks to Elon and to all the staff and engineers there. So at first he dug into these topics himself very deeply, but didn't have too much time. And in the end, he really took a flight there and met up with Elon and with the engineers. All right, so then the next part in this blog post is a short biography of Elon Musk. As he writes here, it is based on the biography from Ashley Vance, which back then was about to be released. By now, there's already a newer, in my opinion, better biography from Walter Isaacson that came out at the end of 2023. I read both of them, and yeah, he makes a short bio here, and later in the post it will be way more detailed as well. So I will just make a quick summary. Elon Musk was born in 1971 in South Africa. His childhood he describes as very difficult. He was always a social outsider. He retreated into his books for a long time, sometimes like 10 hours a day he would just read. And he did a lot of self-learning already from a very young age. And he already saw the human like a computer. He saw the physical body as the hardware, and then the way you think like as the software. He got his first computer when he was 9 years old, so very young. And then he learned himself programming, and at the age of 12 he already sold his first software piece, which was a video game. He sold it back then for $500, which in today's dollars would be $1,600 approximately. So not bad for a 12-year-old. But soon he realized that if he wants to be an entrepreneur, he will not have a bright future in South Africa. So he immigrated first to Canada because his mother was already living there. And then he later came to the US and studying at the university. And he was already wondering to himself, what will be the most, will have the most effect on the future of humanity? And he came up with 5 things: the internet, sustainable energy, space exploration, AI, and genetics. And yeah, for him as a start, he only really saw the internet and sustainable energy because the others were too much in the future, or he just didn't consider himself doing it. So at first he wanted to go into sustainable energy. So first he wanted to do a PhD at Stanford, and he wanted to study high energy density capacitors to improve the battery technology that will later go into electric cars. But actually after a few days he dropped out because he saw the internet spreading very fast, and he wanted to also get onto that train. So here I want to show a quick first quote. After he quit, he thought about how to get into the internet business. And then here the author of Wait But Why says his first move was to try to get a job at the monster of the 1995 internet, Netscape. The tactic he came up with was to walk into the lobby uninvited, stand there awkwardly, be too shy to talk to anyone, and walk out again. So I think that was quite funny how he phrased that. So he didn't get a job there, but then he founded a company with his brother, Kimball Musk, who also came to the US with him. And it was called Zip2. It was kind of like an online dictionary for companies, and it was sort of like a combination of Yelp and Google Maps, but way before those things existed. They sold that company for $307 million, and Elon Musk made 22 million out of that. So that was first time he had a lot of money and he was a millionaire. Then after that, they founded X.com, which is not the same as the X, previously Twitter from today. And this later merged into what is now known as PayPal, with Coinfinity, another company that was founded by Peter Thiel. And they merged it into PayPal, then they had some power struggles. Elon Musk was removed as a CEO when he was at a honeymoon and business trip. But then they still worked together. They sold PayPal for $1.5 billion, and Elon Musk personally made $180 million out of that. But as he would later do a lot more times, he didn't stand still with his money. He didn't just buy a big yacht or an island or something, but he kept investing the money in more, even crazier endeavors. So yeah, first he put his money, 100 million out of that money, into a new company, SpaceX, in 2002. And then in 2004, he also joined Tesla. So the company on the paper already existed, but it didn't have any product or any income. And he put in 70 million of his own money into Tesla and also worked as a CEO. And then also in 2006, he put $10 million of his own money into SolarCity, a company that would later be integrated into Tesla and is now mostly Tesla Energy. Isaacson wrote in his biography that now maybe it sounds like a big master plan, also as these companies kind of get more integrated with each other. But he said that it was more like an iterative escalation and that it was driven by an obsession of Musk. Anyways, then in 2008, with the financial crisis also, it was a very dramatic year for Musk. SpaceX had 3 flights that were not successful. All the rockets exploded, the first flights. So he had a 4th attempt, and this would really be the last one. Also, due to the financial crisis, the car industry looked very bad, and especially for Tesla as an electric startup, it was very hard to get in new investors. And here I want to show a new quote, which I find very ironic, but well put and funny. Tim Urban writes, during this double implosion of his career, the one thing that held stable and strong in Musk's life was his marriage of 8 years. If by stable and strong you mean falling apart entirely in a soul-crushing, messy divorce. So yeah, it must have been a crazy year for Musk. His company is almost failing and he is getting in a messy divorce. But then things turn around. The 4th launch of SpaceX was a success. It didn't explode, it was very successful, and even NASA gave SpaceX a contract worth more than $1 billion. So that company was saved. And then also Tesla, Elon Musk was able to put in a bit more of his own money, and then his other investors matched his investment. And then also a few months after that, Daimler put in another $50 million. So that company was also saved. And yeah, so if we look through the companies again, SpaceX became a low-cost, reliable launch provider. During the blog post, they had 20 successful launches already. Now in 2026, they have over 600 successful launches. The valuation back then was at $12 billion. Today it's around 800 billion. And this year they might even do an IPO, which would maybe even put them at a higher valuation. Then the Tesla Model S was a technological breakthrough by the time of the blog post 2015. It got the highest ever Consumer Reports rating, 99 out of 100, and also the highest NHTSA rating ever, which was 5.4 out of 5 stars. So it crushed the whole scale. And then also the Model 3 was already, there was already the idea of implementing it. It took a long time in the end, but nowadays Model 3 is a successful car and the Model Y is even more successful. In the last years it was always in one of the most successful cars, one of the most sold cars in the whole world. And then also SolarCity grew rapidly. Nowadays it is implemented into Tesla, so Tesla Energy. And it's also a very successful part of Tesla, which is growing dramatically and has a really high profit margin. Now I want to make another quote here. Musk has taken industries like aerospace and automotive that America seemed to have given up on and recast them as something new and fantastic. Chris Anderson, who runs TED Talks, calls Musk the world's most remarkable living entrepreneur. Others know him as the real-life Iron Man, and not for no reason. Jon Favreau actually sent Robert Downey Jr. to spend time with Musk in the SpaceX factory prior to filming the first Iron Man movie, so he could model his character off of Musk. Now, before we go on to how Tim perceived the factories, I think this here is quite important as well. For Tim Urban, it's two main points that he wants to explore in this post-series. First, to understand why Musk is doing what he's doing. And then second, to understand why Musk is able to do what he's doing. So first, the reasoning behind his actions, and then how he's able to do these actions, his methods, his ways of thinking, etc. Okay, then we go on to the factories. So here you can see the red robots in the very white factory. Tim describes that Tesla and SpaceX, they are both very high-tech, like a laboratory kind of, not a traditional factory. He puts all the engineers and technicians all in the same area. He thinks it's very important that they work together and that the engineers, for example, also see how their theoretical ideas also gets put into practice. It was by then, in 2015, already quite automated. But I think if you compare it to now, I will show some pictures of now in a second. Compared to now, it was still quite low output. In 2015, they had around 50,000 cars produced in this one factory. Now, if we compare it to 2025, 10 years later, Tesla produces around 1.7 million cars every year. So that's around 35 times higher output. Of course, they don't only have this factory now. They have several factories around the world. But yeah, it's still crazy to see the progress. So if we compare it to now, I'm over here at the Tesla website. They have a gallery. I will put in the link. You can look at it yourself. They have car models, energy products, etc. They have a lot of pictures. And one of those areas is also about the factories. And yeah, I want to show some pictures. This, for example, is the big factory in Texas, in Austin. This is the paint shop. And here you can see it still looks quite similar to the ones in 2015. But I guess they're just more automated, more efficient, and more high-tech. All right, then after the Tesla factory, Tim also visited the SpaceX factory. Unfortunately, he couldn't show any pictures because it's classified as weapons technology and it's not possible for him to make photos and share it. At least it was not back then. But he has a funny animation here. He sits with Elon Musk at a table and he says, "This rocket factory we're in is yours. It's a thing you have. Yesterday I was in a huge car factory. That's a thing you also have." And then you just see Elon Musk just sitting there and saying nothing. Yeah, I think that represents again the style of the blog post. So I really recommend you guys read it if you're interested in that. Then he goes on to describe that in SpaceX the culture is quite similar to Tesla. It's very intense, very technical. He talked to a lot of employees also in senior roles at both companies, and he says that the employees appear really competent and grounded at both companies. And he says that the employees say that it's very exhausting to work with Elon Musk, but also very inspiring. There is a quote from the article from Tim that says, "My own talks with Musk's engineers and designers told a similar story. I was told Elon always wants to know, why are we not going faster? He always wants bigger, better, faster. by the same person who a few minutes later was emphasizing how fair and thoughtful Musk tends to be in handling the terms for a recently fired employee. So yeah, a lot of people experience that it's both inspiring and also exhausting to work with Elon Musk. So yeah, they have admiration and burnout at the same time. But according to Tim, that's also a core reason why people stay. It's that they respect Musk, that they respect his intelligence, his work ethic, and his mission scale. Another quote from the article: "The people who work for Musk feel an immense amount of respect for his intelligence, for his work ethic, for his guts, and for the gravity of the mission he's undertaking. Missions that make all other potential jobs seem trivial and pointless." Another point Tim makes is that Musk is seen as very consistent in what he says. He's very direct, and what he doesn't like is PR and advertising. And yeah, my personal take is he doesn't like PR and advertising because he sees it as a kind of manipulation to get people to buy the product, and he would rather put the money and invest it in the product, so to make the products better and not to make advertisement for the products themselves. So yeah, he has extreme demands for his employees, but Tim says also it doesn't feel that hypocritical for the employees because it's normal to work 80 hours and it's a lot of pressure, but also Musk works 100 hours, so it's not hypocritical at least. And he says the thinking of Musk is very fast, very technical, and very wide-ranging. And lastly, the main fixations he has in his thinking are AI risk, sustainable energy, making humanity multiplanetary. So those three are always on his mind. And before I go on to make a last comparison of 2015 to now in 2026, 2025, I have another quote which I think represents quite well this blog post series. There are a lot of things about Musk that make him so successful, but I do think there's a secret sauce that puts Musk in a different league from even the other renowned billionaires of our time. I have a theory about what that is, which has to do with the way Musk thinks, the way that he reasons for problems, and the way he views the world. As this series continues, think about this, and we'll discuss a lot more in the last post. So yeah, that's kind of how he thinks throughout this whole blog post series. And now lastly, as a comparison between 2015, when this article was released, and 10 years later, I have a few facts. Tesla deliveries, as already said, were 50,000. Now they are 1.7 million. SpaceX launches were around 7 per year in 2015. Now it's around, in 2025, it was over 160 per year, which was a world record. The rocket reusability, back then it was quite experimental still in 2015. Now they have made over 500 reused flights, and sometimes they use a single booster for up to more than 30 times. And then Neuralink, which will be the last post of this series. They didn't have any human trials back then in 2015. Now they have FDA-approved human trials, and in 2025 they had around 10 to 12 patients already. And lastly, the net worth of Musk was like 13 billion back then. Now it's around 700 billion. But that's it for now. If you're interested in seeing the other parts, you can find them in the description, or if they are not out yet, subscribe to this channel to see all the following analysis. It also helps me a lot maintaining this kind of work. So thank you and see you soon.